So as Karine said, my name is Scott Hendren. I'm the Instructional Design Projects Manager for the Dassault and PTC products at ASCENT. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in the training and training development business since around 1997. I've held various positions at different companies, from RAND to CAD-Train to PTC, and now at ASCENT. So I've been around the 3D modeling and the PLM space for some time. Very happy to be presenting to you today, and I'm glad you could join us for what I hope you find to be a useful and informative hour. Today's topic will be the CATIA V5 Functional Tolerancing and Annotation, Chapter 5, Annotation Management. And I'll be going through this chapter that's found in our guide. We'll be looking at leader symbols, mirroring annotations, transferring and grouping annotations, as well as annotation filters and cameras. And then we'll look at sort of taking all of that and combining that into what are referred to as captures. And we'll also take a look at the geometry connection management. So we'll start with our first topic, which is leader symbols. Depending on the leader type and feature being referenced, you may require a different leader symbol than what is currently displayed. And it's very simple to make a change. You simply select the annotation. When the drag handles display, you right-click on the end manipulator and select the symbol shape option, and then you select the symbol that you want to place. And you can change this at any point in time when you're annotating your geometry. We can also mirror annotations. So what can happen is, as the model is oriented, or maybe better said, reoriented, the annotations themselves remain fixed. And so the direction of the text might not display as you need it for a particular view. At any time, you can flip the text using the Mirror Annotations option, and the system will reverse those annotations so that they can be displayed the way you need them to be displayed. We can also transfer annotations from one annotation plane to another. So each annotation is, of course, placed in a particular view to better organize and display the information. This view can easily be changed so that you can improve that organization of the model. You select the annotation, right-click, and select Transfer to View Annotation Plane, and then select the destination plane, so the annotation plane where you actually want it displayed. One thing to keep in mind with this tool, of course, is the destination plane, the plane that you want to move that annotation to. It has to exist before you try to do the transfer. So simply make or create that annotation plane and then do the transfer. Often you'll have annotations that reference the same geometry. So I may have, in this case, a shaft, and it has 3 annotations associated with it. To more easily handle those annotations, you can group annotations that belong to the same geometrical element. The system always groups the selected annotation with the previously selected annotation. So what I mean by that is, if I have one annotation and I want to group a second annotation with it, that's great. If I now group a third annotation with it, the system actually groups that third annotation to the second annotation. And that is really only critical in the sense that when I go to edit the positioning of those annotations, I have to edit the position of the first annotation that I've grouped and then the second annotation that I've grouped. And we do that positioning using the positioning dialog box. And there are several options available within that positioning dialog box. We can align to the bottom. So in this first example, we have a 9.95 diameter dimension, and then we have a positioning tolerance that's grouped to it, and it's aligned to the bottom. We can also align to the top, to the right, and to the left. There's also a center horizontally option. With the center horizontally option, you will want to be a little bit careful. The name's slightly misleading. To me, if someone were to say that there's a center horizontally option, it would sound to me like whatever I'm aligning, the centers of both items would be aligned, and that's not quite the case. With center horizontally, the system will orient the left-hand side of your annotation with the center of the base or the first annotation. So that's why when you look at what's labeled here as figure 518, the annotation is lined up, the position tolerance rather, is lined up with the center of the 9.95 dimension. When you use these tools to position your grouped annotations, depending on what it is you're working with, you may find that the annotations slightly overlap or interfere with one another. So within that dialog box, there's also an offset option that lets you add an offset and kind of clean up the display of those annotations. So if we look at this example, again, same dimension, this 9.95 diameter dimension, there are two tolerances associated with it. The position tolerance is located with an offset to pull it down from the 9.95 dimension, but the perpendicular tolerance has no offset so that it lines up nice and cleanly with the previous annotation. We also have the ability to filter our annotations. So when you're viewing a model that's heavily detailed, sometimes it's nice to be able to clear some of the annotations out of the way so that you can really focus on the meat of what it is you want to display. So the filter option lets you hide any unwanted annotations and only display those that are applicable to the current view. So the general steps would be to click Filter, define any of your filter options, and then apply that filter. Within the filter dialog box, you'll notice the current filter section. That lists for you whatever the current filter is. So as you add a filter, it will get listed there so you know exactly what's being filtered. The other piece about this to kind of keep in mind is when it says filter, it's not filtering away, it's filtering to show you something specific. So the options that you have are to filter all, which will display all annotations. You can filter none, which won't display any. You can filter by subtype and by type. So subtype would be something like a simple datum or a perpendicularity tolerance or flatness tolerance. By type would be a higher level. So rather than a specific tolerance like perpendicularity or flatness, it would be all position, orientation, and runout tolerances. You can also filter by value. So what that will allow you to do is to filter out any annotations that match a specific criteria for the value of the annotation. So in this example, we want to filter by value, and we want to filter for any annotations that have a tolerance greater than or equal to 2. So the system will then only display for me any annotations that have a tolerance value greater than or equal to 2. And if you have annotations that don't have a tolerance at all, so notes, for example, they simply won't display if you use this option. The final option is by feature, and by feature allows you to actually go to the specification tree and select those specific annotations that you want to display. Within the filter itself, we also have the ability to refine our filter. And by refining our filter, it allows us to create an additive set of filters. So rather than just filtering by one item, like the subtype position, I can also filter by value. So in this particular case, any annotations that are position tolerances that have a value greater than 2 will be displayed. Anything else will not be displayed. If you've used filters in other tools, you may find that they're a little more robust. So rather than just having an additive, AND operator, they also have OR operators. That's not the case here. It's only the AND operator. The last option within this dialog box is the Show Geometry Attachments option. So what that will do is it'll run the filter, and it will display any of the annotations that match your filter settings. But when you click Show Geometry Attachments, it will also show any annotations that are grouped with the annotations that would result from the filter. We also have the ability to use cameras. So cameras show, a particular viewpoint of the model. So if you want to orient your model in a particular way and maybe zoom in on a particular feature, you can save that view so that you can retrieve it at any time later on. You simply reorient the model. You click Named Views, click Add to name the view, and then you can modify the name if you wish. The default would be camera.1, and then if you kept that name and created another one, it would be camera.2, and so on. I would recommend, though, that you give these cameras a useful name. You more than likely are not the only person who will be looking at this model, so if you give a descriptive name for the camera, whoever else looks at this model will know what that named view is and what it does. So we've looked at things like annotation filters and cameras and mirroring annotations, etc. We can now take all of that, combine it all together, and store it in what's referred to as a capture. Captures are that combination of entities, the filters, the cameras, etc., that provide a particular view of the model. And you can store that capture in the specification tree and set that capture at any point in time. When you click on Capture, the system displays the Capture Definition dialog box, lets you enter a name for the capture. Again, it would be beneficial to put in some sort of meaningful name here for the capture. And then you have two additional options, Display in 3D and then the More button. So Display in 3D will allow the system to label on the model the name of the capture and a small little square to indicate that there is a capture. What that will do is that lets you actually activate and edit the capture directly on the 3D model. The issue with it, though, is it's sort of further clutter to the model when you're looking at it. So use that option with some care. But something that's extremely useful is clicking on More and adding hidden text. So when you enter text into the hidden text field of the dialog box, whatever you type in there will be added to the capture in the specification tree, so that when you hover over it, it shows up as a tooltip. So again, someone else or you perhaps sometime in the future are working with this model and you see these captures and you're not sure what they do. If you've added this text, you can simply hover over the capture and display a description of what that capture will show. when you create the captures, again, you're placed in the capture definition dialog box, enter this information, and you click OK. That will actually take you into the tolerancing capture workbench. So it's almost like a workbench within a workbench. Once you've organized your model as you see fit, so again, applied any annotation filters, set up cameras, etc., you then complete the capture, and you can refer back to that capture at any point in time. So while you're defining the capture, you can use the create options to associate a camera to the capture. There are default cameras you can also go in and create, as we talked about, custom views. You can turn the clipping plane on and off so you can see a sectioned view of the model. You can also use the active view state option. So if the active view state option is enabled, then whenever the capture is enabled, the annotation plane that's associated with it will also automatically be activated. And we can also use the current state option. So as you're defining your capture, you can enable or disable the set current, unset current option. So what this will do is, when I've created a capture, that's a capture of the model at a particular state, at a particular point in time. If I now add additional annotations to the model, they are not added to any existing captures by default. If I click Set Current, then from that point forward, any annotations that are added to the model will automatically be added to my capture. And I can have multiple scenarios here where some of my captures have this set, some of my captures do not have this set. It just depends on what you want to achieve. You can set this within the workbench by clicking on the little camera with the recording, the little red circle next to it. Alternatively, you don't actually have to enter the workbench. From the specification tree, you can right-click on a capture, and at any point in time, click Set Current or Unset Current. So it saves you the trouble of having to go back into the workbench. Another tool that you'll find useful is setting the visibility status. So by default, if I hide or show bodies, geometrical sets, or if I'm in an assembly components, when I hide or show them, that status isn't saved with my capture by default. But I can do one of two things. I can right-click on the capture, select Properties, and within the Properties dialog box, go to Capture Attributes, and enable the Manage the Visibility of Part Instances, Bodies, and Geometrical Sets option. When I do that, any changes that I make to the hide show status of entities within the model, that information will be saved. I can also set this, that's specific to whatever capture I select. I can also set this globally within the options for CATIA. Now, once I've created some captures, I may discover down the road that there are annotations that I want to add or remove from my capture. You simply select the annotation, right-click, select Capture Management, and here you can either push annotations into your capture or remove them from your capture. One sort of best practice that you should keep in mind is to always create a default capture. And with the default capture, you'll want the model to have all the annotations displayed, the model in a nice, isometric orientation, and then capture that status so that you can easily, after you've created other captures, you can easily return to that fully annotated view anytime you wish. So I'm going to do 2 demos at this point in time, and then there is some other information that I want to go over as well. But we'll take a bit of a break from the lecture piece to go through a couple of demos. So this first one, I'm going to create a default capture, and then I'm going to create several other captures to manage the model display. After that, I'm going to look at another model, create some captures, but this time I'll create some captures with the hide show status enabled for the different captures that I create. And I will also modify some of the settings for the clipping planes. So I'll switch over to CATIA. And I have my first model already open. So the first thing that I want to do is to create my default capture. So I click the capture tool, and the capture dialog box opens. So here, I can enter a name, so I'll call this cap all, and this is going to be my default capture that shows all of my annotations. I click OK, and then I simply exit the workbench. So if I go to captures, I can see now that that capture has been added. So let's create another capture. We'll call this one cap feature. And in this case, I want to add several dimensions to this. So I'm going to filter. So I click the filter option. And I come over to my dimensions. And I want to only show these dimensions. Oh, sorry. So select those dimensions. Again, as with most things, to select multiple items, just hold the Control key. And you'll notice that the filter dialog box, by default, switches to by feature because I'm selecting annotation features. So I click Apply, and the system removes all of the other annotations except those that I have selected to be displayed. I then click OK, and that completes the capture. Exit the workbench, and now I can switch back and forth between these captures by simply right-clicking, selecting Display Capture. So there's my cap all capture, which shows everything. And there's the capture that just shows those features. So we'll return to the cap all capture, and now I'm ready to create another one. So this time I'm going to create one that just shows some GD&T. So again, I want to filter. And this time I'm going to filter by type, and I'm going to filter position, orientation, and runout. I click Apply, and the system then only shows me the GD&T annotations. So as we discussed, there is the Show Geometry Attachments option. So when I do that and click Apply, it now shows me any annotations that are grouped with the annotations that displayed as the result of the filter that I set. So click OK, and we complete that capture. So again, generally, you'll want to start with the cap all capture to make sure that you don't miss anything when you're creating your additional captures. And now we'll create one more called cap section. So now we will filter, and we'll select several items from the specification tree. So under geometrical tolerances, we'll select flatness and surfacic position surfacic profile. And you'll notice that the basic dimension 4 is highlighted. So we click OK at this point. That gives us the annotations that we want. And now we can show the clipping plane. So we'll set this to normal view, and we'll select the view, front view 1. And now I want to be able to come back to this whenever I want. So I'm going to go to named views. And I want to add a view here. So I click add. And instead of leaving the default name, we'll call it cam section. Click OK. Now, I just created that camera, but you'll notice that it's not set as the camera for this capture. So make sure that you select it, and now it's part of this particular capture. So we can exit the workbench, and that capture is created. So if we go back to cap all, you'll notice that it's displaying all of the annotations, but it hasn't changed the camera. And the reason it hasn't changed the camera is because I didn't create a camera with that particular capture, so it simply remains in the orientation it was in. So we'll put this in 3D orientation, an isometric view, just so we can see it. And if we now go back to the cap section capture, it reorients the model and puts us in the view that we expect. Okay, so let's now take a look at the second demonstration. Here we're going to create some captures and keep the hide show status of those captures. Then we'll also modify the clipping planes. So we'll create a new capture. Quick capture. And then we'll enter a name for this. Default capture. So that's our default capture, and we will exit the workbench. Now, what we want to do is to ensure that the hide show status for this particular view is maintained. So there is a geometric set here, and there's also an additional body here, the locking pin. They are to be displayed in this main view. So within our capture, we simply right-click Default Cap, select Properties, click Capture Attributes, and we select the Manage the Visibility of Part Instances, Bodies, and Geometrical Sets. Now, because this is now set, the system will remember that everything within this view that's either shown or hidden should be displayed in that way. So we now create a second capture, and we'll call this one Flange Only Cap. Now, in this particular case, we're going to hide the locking pin and the geometrical set. We'll also set the camera view to ISO. And exit the workbench. Now again, I want this to remember the show hide status, so we'll just set the properties for that. So now if I switch between these captures, see now that the component displays and the geometric sets, or not components, sorry, the body displays and the geometrical set displays. And if I go to the flange only cap and display it, now they're removed. Now we want to modify the clipping plane and how that clipping plane is displayed. So we simply go to Tools, Options, and under the Functional Tolerancing and Workbench group, we go to the Display tab, and under Hatching, Coloring, or Dotting for Clipping Plane, we enable Display. Now we want to show this with the material highlighted. So we click Shading with Material. And if we look at the part body, we'll see that aluminum was the material that's been applied to this particular part. So we can right-click that, select Properties, and under Drawing, we have the ability now to change the way the hatching is displayed. So right now, it's a single line, 45-degree angle, green color, solid line. What we want is more of a crisscross pattern. So we'll change this to 2 hatchings. We'll go to hatching 1. We'll set that to 60 degrees. We'll go to hatching 2, set that to -60. Change the color to green and make sure that it's a solid line. And then we can click OK. So now when I enable the clipping plane, I can see, and just so we can see it a little more clearly, we will turn off the annotations. I was able to very quickly change the way in which the hatching displays. Okay, so let's close that up, and we'll go back to the last topic, which is geometry connection management. So the geometry connection management tool lets you investigate, change, add, rename geometric references that were selected to create an annotation. So again, it's important to remember that the way in which the 3D model itself was created is not necessarily the way you want it to be annotated. So this tool lets you make changes to the way items display within the annotations themselves. And it saves you having to go back and edit the way in which the features themselves were created. So we can go in, we can select an annotation, access the connection management tool, replace any references that we want, and the system will change the way the annotation displays. So here's a perfect example. When the model was created, this hole was dimensioned off of, as we're looking at it, the left-hand surface. But the datum is actually added to this right-hand surface. So the dimension should actually be off of that datum. So we can use the geometry connection management tool to, without going in and changing the whole feature, we can actually go in and just change the way in which this annotation is displayed. So again, we access the connection management tool. We right-click on the reference that we want to change, and we click Connect. We then select the reference that we now want to use, and the system will update the dialog box to reflect that. You'll notice, though, under Current Validity, there will be a question mark. You want the system to actually go in and check to make sure that whatever change you are making is valid and is okay. So when you do that, you click Check Validity, and it will come back with OK. So you may discover when you do this that the entity that you want to change is actually interconnected with more than one annotation. And so checking validity will allow the system to go through and make sure that the change you're making is actually valid for everything within the model. The last thing that we'll look at today is changing a datum reference frame for geometrical tolerance. So if we look at this particular example, we have the position tolerance established from datums A and B. And what we really want is that position tolerance to be established from datum A, B, C. So we can change the datum reference frame without having to delete the geometric tolerance that's been created. We'll create the new datum reference frame, and that's a critical piece to using the replace datum reference frame option. Whatever datum reference frame you want to use as your replacement, it has to already be created before you try to use this tool. So you create the datum reference frame, you select the geometric tolerance that you want to change, right-click, select Replace Datum Reference Frame, and then select the new datum reference frame. And the system will automatically update that geometric tolerance to reflect the change. So in this example, we're going to go back to CATIA and do our final example for today. We will add a datum reference frame. We'll edit a geometric tolerance to reference that new datum reference frame. And we'll also edit a datum so that it references a different plane than what it's referencing originally. So we have our model, and what we want to do is first set this to normal view so that we can get a planar view of it. And you'll notice we have this geometric tolerance that references the datum frame ABC, and we want to change that. So the first thing we have to do is to create the datum reference frame that we want. So we enter the semantic tolerance advisor, and we add a new datum reference frame. And it's a datum reference frame for datum A, B. We click OK, and we close this up. And you'll notice in the reference frames that now datum reference frame AB has been created. So we want to go into the geometric tolerances, and we have the position tolerance. So we can right-click that and select Replace Datum Reference Frame. We then select Datum Reference AB, and you'll notice the geometric tolerance immediately updates to reflect that change, and it now references Datum Reference Frame AB. Now what we want to do is we actually want to change this datum A so that it references a plane that's at the center of this slot. So we'll just rotate the model a little bit so we can make our selections. The first thing we'll do is we will create some construction geometry. So we'll select this surface and this surface. Oh, sorry, didn't hold Control in. So there's my two surfaces. Now I create my datum reference geometry, and we create, I'm not sure how big everyone's screen is, so we now click plane, and OK. So that creates our new reference plane. So now we want to relocate datum A. So in the specification tree under datums, we select datum A. we enable the Geometry Connection Management dialog box. And we see that the reference for Datum A is this face of pad 1. So we right-click that, we select Connect, and we select our new reference. So you can see by making this change, there are multiple entities that are related to that datum. So you will always want to check the validity of this change. So you click Check Validity. Everything is fine, so you click OK. And now the datum, if we go back to our normal view, the datum is now this plane. So that doesn't look quite right. We want to clean that up a little bit. So we can just fix this by selecting the plane. We right-click the end, switch it to a perpendicular leader, and then we can move the datum as we see fit. And that completes that demonstration as well. So that completes the content that I wanted to go over today. Before we get into questions, just a comment that this course is available in our printed guides, our spiral-bound printed guides, via ebook as well. And if you are an instructor who uses these guides for training, there's also instructor tools as well, which are a set of instructor overheads. So, Corrine, that's my presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. If you want to just go to the last slide, I'll just remind everyone, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat window. We just wanted to let you know, as well, we also have technical writing services. We can customize any of documentation that you need, anything from basic editing and proofreading right up to a full customized course we can offer. So we've got a full team of people here, or full-time staff, that can do that for us, or for you rather. We can do that for you. I think that if you want to click again, I don't know if there's more at the bottom of that screen, Scott.
There is.
There we go, our custom curriculum, yeah. So if you want to include your own workflows, models, processes right into the training guide, we can do that for you. So reach out to Scott, reach out to any of us here at ASCENT, and we can help you with that. Which leads us into the next slide as to how you can contact us and how you can purchase any of our information, any of our courseware. So you can purchase everything on our ASCENTeStore.com website or on our own website, ASCENTED.com. We've got all of our materials for sale there. You can also view table of contents and download sample chapters as well. So if you'd like to reach out to us, we're on Twitter, so do follow us for the latest updates on courseware. Also, if there's any promos running, I post them there. We have a blog. We're on Pinterest. So we're all over the website and social media, so do check us out. And if you have any feedback at all for us, you can call us, or the easiest way is just to send us an email to the feedback@ascented.com.